It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Dr. Hemali Ajmera, DDS, FACD. You can remember her name. Just think of a hot tamale. Her name is Dr. Hemali. She is a general dentist in New York, practicing dentistry in 3 of the 5 boroughs. She's been in private practice for 12 years, having graduated from New York University College of Dentistry, NYU, which I think is about 7% of the dentists in America came from NYU. She is a highly skilled general and cosmetic dentist serving patients from all over the tri-state area. At our practice in Woodside, Queens, New York. In 2008, she graduated with a doctor of dental surgery from NYU. Now, as a practicing professional, she specializes in addressing the oral health needs and aesthetic concerns of her patients. She relishes the opportunity to provide her patients with brighter, straighter, more attractive smiles. At her practice, she offers a host of services, including restorations like crowns, bridges, teeth whitenings, discreet orthodontic options like Invisalign. She also places an emphasis on preventative dentistry, arming her patients with the knowledge of proper oral hygiene methods and providing professional deep cleanings. Outside of the office, she makes it a point to discuss the importance of oral health in her community and beyond. As a spokesperson for the Queens County Dental Society and New York State Dental Association, she has made appearances on NY1, Fox News, and Dr. Oz. For that very reason, to promote the American Dental Association. When she's not practicing dentistry, she is an avid runner, having competed in cross country during her high school days. Dr. Oz, did he go to NYU?
No, I believe he did. He was not a graduate from NYU, but you know what? He's a fabulous person, and it was really nice to be invited. He has a great personality. Flossgate was very interesting. We couldn't believe we were on screen discussing something so silly, but there we were, and it was a good time. We taught the world how to floss.
Well, I think that's so cool about the way you can talk, to people on the other side of the world. Because I have to admit, when I first started hearing Dr. Oz and all that, I mean, I didn't know whether this is a guy to trust or not. But it wasn't even a couple months later, I was at a dental meeting at NYU, and I ran into 2 dentists who actually knew him, and they said, "No, man, this guy's a great guy. He's a great surgeon." So it's great to have inside information, like, is this guy, who is this guy? And they were both like, "This is the real deal."
You know what? I think he's in a tough spot because you have to be a spokesperson for health, lifestyle, and a number of other things. I think he does a great job of it. And I cannot say one negative thing about him. He is so knowledgeable. I think that he has a great persona. And I think that's important when you take healthcare, any realm of healthcare, something that invokes so much fear, and you make it personable and you make it something that people seek out. I give anyone that can do that a ton of credit, because we do that on a daily basis, and converting that fear into something that people want to seek out is really a tough job.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is funny, whenever I hear a dentist arguing about something like Dr. Oz or some natural thing or whatever, I always think it's funny because they're not listening to the market. The American market, at least half of America believes that if I go to the traditional doctor, he's going to give me a bunch of pharmaceutical pills. Oh, you got high blood pressure? Take this pill. Oh, you can't sleep? Take this pill. Oh, you have erectile dysfunction? Here, take this pill. And they just give you pills. And then the dentist, if you say you're holistic, they say, oh, you're a quack. But then when that dentist gets high blood pressure, then he's like, oh, man, I just read the book, The K Factor, and I'm going to eat more potassium and less sodium, and I'm going to start eating. And I'm like, you sound like one of them holistic nut jobs. Why don't you just go down to Walgreens and take a pill? And that's what Dr. Oz was doing. He knows half of America doesn't trust the healthcare system. And on Dental Town, the word holistic is not a popular. I'd rather be known as the hot tamale than the holistic tamale. And every dentist that trashes holistic dentistry is a holistic person themselves. And every dentist I know that puts it on their website, like, we have alternative treatments, we're more holistic. They have people driving an hour across Phoenix to go to a holistic dentist. And then when you go on the journals, polyphagia, by the time your doctor's got you on 5 prescriptions, you got 1 foot in the grave. I mean, just from the side effects of all that. So I think it's funny that his biggest controversies was when he offered some natural alternative plant-based something instead of something made by Pfizer or AstraZeneca or
Right.
Upjohn. You know what I mean? So power to him. And that's why I call my podcast Dentistry Uncensored, because I love the people that can stand up to the machine and tell you what they actually believe.
That's why I'm agreeing that I give him so much credit because he puts so much information out there, and he makes it a discussion point. And he's competing with a lot of TV out there that's not informational. So for him to take things that are controversial, things that are undefined in many ways, and to create a platform for that and a dialogue for that, that is very challenging. And I think dentistry as a whole is also trying to do that and achieve that just for our industry. And I really credit him a lot.
So I got to ask the most obvious question for you. I mean, you're in New York City, so that everyone around the world knows that. In fact, it's so funny when you're in another country, and they always say, "Oh, I've been to America." Well, 90% of the time it means they flew into LaGuardia and flew and went to the New York dental meeting and flew out of LaGuardia, and I'm sitting there in their mind thinking they think the United States is Manhattan and where the New York Dental Convention is. I mean, wait till they see Kansas. I mean, so they don't know America, but my God, that's the most viciously competitive market. I mean, how many dental schools do you have in those 5 boroughs?
From what I know, we have five major dental schools, and the newest addition is Toro, and we are so excited about that. And we have a number of lovely dental students that graduate, from the New York State region every single year, and they're fabulous kids. And then they come into our residency programs, and we definitely have a very diverse population. We have a very unique pool of dental students that graduate with a great skill set every single year. And this was a unique year for all of them. Well, I want to congratulate all of them for graduating virtually, and I wish them all the best on their residency tracks.
You said in the opening that in your intro that you the tri-state area that might have flown over someone's head, not from America. What do you mean by the tri-state area?
Well, we're talking about New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and it's a unique region because it's heavily populated and very dense in terms of just the corporate world, tons of dentists and tons of other industries packed into a very small region.
So what was your mind think? I mean, so many consultants would have told you, hey, you know what you need to do? You need to go. 11% of the counties in the Midwest do not have a dentist in the whole county. And so in fact, the easiest thing to tell kids is that if you drive 2 hours away from any airport that will land a 737, it's a gold mine. But if you're within an hour away from the airport, or if you're practicing and you can see planes landing in the sky, it's too competitive. So I'm just wondering, what was going through your mind when you said, yeah, hey, you know where I should set up? In the downtown busiest part of all of North America. What would and what was your strategies to survive that?
So I would say there's definitely a personality type for city practice, and I think there's a personality for more suburban practice. I would say know who you are, know your personality type, know if you are a go getter or if you want your clients to walk in and seek you out because you are a precious commodity in the area. I would say that if you're looking to develop a skill set, find an area or a niche that fits you because the city may not be the place to start. And that was a very challenging decision for me to make right off the bat when I graduated. And there was a big part of me that was like, get out, you can make so much more, so much faster, and you'll go to an area where you are really in demand. And I thought to myself, no, I definitely want to take on the city. I want to push myself with my marketing skills, my networking skills. And I really wanted to put myself out there because I knew that my focus really was going to be cosmetic dentistry in the long run. And I didn't want to go further out where I knew I would turn into more of a younger drill and fill type of dentist. Although I knew I was going to have more of a dental community, I did build that over the years through the various philanthropic kind of activities that I took on in my career on the side. But there was that charm, there was that curiosity that if I get out of the city, I will be very unique. And I know that it will be easy for me to find a client base because I would be so sought out versus being in the city. But I enjoyed the challenge of being in the city.
So what did you say would and you totally have a New York City personality. I mean, you've been on all the media, the TV, the Fox News, the Dr. Oz. I've always noticed that the dentists that make it on Dr. Oz they're always hot. And the really successful cosmetic dentists are always hot. They never look like Elmer Fudd. Would you be honest enough to say, hey, if you want to go to LA or Beverly Hills or New York and be a cosmetic dentist, at least look like Hot Tamale or Bill Dorfman. But if you kind of look like Howard, you need to go to Kansas and reline dentures. I mean, really, do you know any really successful cosmetic dentists that aren't hot? I don't know any. The ones in Scottsdale that are crushing it, they're hot. The ones in Scottsdale that look like me who want to be a cosmetic dentist. I mean, would you go to a yoga class if the lady weighed 400 pounds and was smoking a cigar?
Well, you make a good point. I think you're being a little hard on yourself. I think that there's something to be said about looking like a seasoned dentist. I think that there's a certain charm to that. And I did struggle in my early years, despite everything you said. And, I did get you look too young. You must be a nurse. You must be the hygienist. Are you sure you might be the secretary? And I said, nope, I'm going to be your dentist for the day. And, I say, all shapes and sizes, whatever you are, a great dentist is a great dentist. And I think that word of mouth does the trick in our industry when it comes to that.
So, I mean, my gosh, I want you to put on your hat and pretend that you didn't graduate over a decade ago in 2008, that you just crawled out of dental kindergarten, class of 2020, dental COVID. She just graduated. I mean, I'm in Phoenix, 2 dental schools. I mean, she's 25. She's $400,000 in debt. She graduated during a pandemic. And let me give you some brutal examples. So we started Dentaltown in 98, and we had the free classified ads. So there's always been about 5,000 ads for anything and everything, but it's usually been about 1,000 practices for sale and 5,000 associate jobs available. Now there's 2,000 practices for sale, because a lot of the 60-year-old dentists say, screw it, and there's only 1,000 jobs available. So just from March to now, in 5 months, we went from 5,000 dentists advertising an associate job to 1,000, and we doubled the number of practices. So basically, the 60-year-olds who never got divorced, they're debt-free, and they're just saying, I'm not going to do all this new stuff. But if you got divorced just one time, you back up your retirement 10 years and you got to go get your pandemic ready shoes back on. So what would you tell this little girl? First of all, do you think she made a bad mistake? Do you think dentistry might have looked like a great idea when she graduated from high school, but now in 2020, it doesn't look like a good idea? Are you down on dentistry? Are you down on it for a year? What would you tell her?
So here's my thought process, and I'm so glad you asked that question. I think that this is the best time for young dentists. This is a massive time for opportunity because so many of the seasoned dentists are looking to leave the game, which means so many of their clients are out there looking for a new dentist. So if you are going to make that move to open your practice, this is the time to do that. Like all things, this is temporary. This is a phase. We went through a recession. We came out of it. We're going through COVID. We're going to come out of it. And there's going to be other highs and lows. I think it's important, though, to implement strategies and procedures in place that are unique and that are niche based so that you can pick up the clients that the prior dentist is putting out there. And I think that for the seasoned dentist, this is a fabulous time to retire. But I also think for the younger dentists, this is a scary time, but it's also a time to move beyond that fear and implement new technologies, implement fresh new ideas, and bring in new clients. And I'm not just saying that to make everything sound rosy and paint this fabulous picture, because it's definitely not as easy said, easily done as it's said. But what I do want to say is that those clients, those patients would have never been out there had these seasoned dentists not been looking to leave. And many of these clients are looking for a fresh face, a fresh outlook. And this is a time when people are more concerned about their systemic health. So you're being given the opportunity. The marketing is kind of being done for you. People are aware of their health and their teeth and their smile.
The practice brokers, the transaction people, they barely have time to take a phone call. And it's every 60-year-old dentist and over that never, ever got the divorce. I mean, my student loans were $87,000. My divorce was $3.8 million. I mean, I like to tell those young kids, you think that $400,000 of student loans is a lot? Wait till you get divorced, okay? You would give anything to have a divorce for only $400,000. But those people who never did that, they're like, well, I don't want to go figure out all this PPE, and they're talking about lights and negative pressure, and they're just like, you know what, I'm ready to go fishing. And there's so many practices up for sale. And what's also amazing is banks who used to say, well, we need 1 year's experience. They got such an inventory glut. Some of these banks, like I can't say their name, but I'll disguise it, Skank of America. They're like, man, if you want to sign the dotted line, we're going for the dotted line, because so yeah, there is a glut of older, highly efficient people that are walking away from practices. And I'll give you another hint. There's a lot of practices that have been abandoned in the rural areas because the practice transition brokers say you're never going to sell that, so they just closed it down. And the only dentist, let's be honest, let's be frank, it's Dentistry Uncensored. The only dentists that go to those places, they're already in dental school, married with a kid, so they already have their whole Friday night scene in one van. And they don't really care where the van is. They're not going anywhere anyway. And they'll drive to that town in the middle of nowhere, and they'll crush it. So you're right. Whenever you turn something upside down, there's a lot of marketing. I want to ask you a problem I have trying to wrap my hand around how millennials think. Are you technically a millennial? Or
Yeah, I would like to.
you look like a millennial, so we'll just go with it. You look like a hot tamale millennial.
I would like to be identified that way for the purposes of this call.
So I say this all the time, that when you look at history, 1900, healthcare is 1% of GDP. By 2000, it's 14%. By 2020, it's 17%. At 1900, there's no specialties. By 2000, the MDs have 58. We have like 8. Now we have like 10. But it seems like a lot of the millennials come out and they say, oh, I'm going to master Invisalign and implants and endo and silver diamine fluoride and cosmetic dentist. I mean, they're going to master everything. And it's like, dude, are we going back to 1900 where you're going to deliver my baby, fix my broken arm, and do a root canal? So how do you, and I love it because they're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and ready to go. They want it all. And I'm like, slow down, Spanky. It's really hard to get good at just one thing. So how do you coach a kid out of school who's ready to run around New York City 8 times a day to just say, well, let's learn one thing well first? How do you start them on that agenda?
Okay, so what I frequently encounter is they come out of school, and the ones who went into school and knew their specialty are the lucky ones. They go on to specialize. And then you have a slew of them who just don't know. They're these GPs that are looking for their track. Am I going to be a super GP? Am I going to be a specialist? Am I going to go into management and never practice? So I think what I would like to, the message I'd like to send and the, thought process for me is try everything. Don't get too pent up on being initially perfect and a super GP at every single thing. Variety is the spice of life. So open the doors for yourself. If you're in a position to take the classes and take on the associateships where you'll learn different things, make that a temporary phase. Diversify yourself the way you would diversify a successful stock portfolio. But in the long run, you'll burn out with that thought process. So find one track as you're trying everything in the pool and then stick to that, because I definitely think that the work-life balance situation is very important initially, and you will burn out trying to be very, very good at every single thing. I would say try everything. There's that curiosity. What is it like to place an implant? Many of them wouldn't have done that in school. What is it like to do, clear aligners? What is it like to do, third molar wisdom tooth endo? Try it, learn it, get good at it. But then also realize that you have to ultimately find one thing that you enjoy. And I think that it took me a dozen years to kind of get to a point where I was like, I tried everything. I took the endo courses and the aligner courses and the implant courses. And now I'm like, okay, this is where I want to be, and this is what my focus is going to be, especially with technology that can get really overwhelming, that you have to implement and use and get the ROI on it. Don't go out there and buy a dozen different technologies and then say, oh my God, now I'm stuck here with all these things that I can't pay off, because that will happen as you realize that, oh my God, this is the one thing that I love doing.
Okay, I want you to I want you to answer. This is a personal question just for me and my friends. And when I say one of my dental friends, it just means some dentist in Phoenix with a drinking problem. Um, they they view their kids like okay, I heard this one over the weekend. You know how many days I called in sick the first 30 years I owned my office? Never. You know how many times my daughter has called in sick since she's graduated from dental school 1 year ago? 2 days a month. I mean, the dad is ready to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week till they drop dead from here to Japan. And then their millennial wants a work-life balance, and it's a four deal. So you only became a dentist because your mom's a dentist, she's your idol, you want to practice with her, but quite frankly, she thinks you're lazy. And she's told you that several times because she wants you to work 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday go take a 2-day hands-on implant course and then fly back on the red eye on Sunday. I mean, so do you see a difference in work-life values and ethics between the dentists who are over 60 versus the dentists that are under 30?
I definitely do see that difference, and I'm actually happy to see that difference. I'm happy to see that the newer, fresher pool of dentists is less prone to working hard and burning out, or just being work, work, work. And I think I feel that way because we're doing these procedures that have a lot more of return on investment, so we can work less and enjoy life a little bit more. We can work less and also, so to speak, have that time with our friends and family that our families that have been practicing prior to us may not really have had the luxury to have. And I think there's more in the way of, hobbies nowadays, special interests that we can partake in, or other aspects to our own industry that weren't really available before. So I think that, it's definitely important to work enough initially in your career, but then also to understand that you don't really have to work 5, 6, 7 days. As someone who did do that, to make my parents happy, I can tell you that can only go on for so long. You have to make time to network. You have to make time to develop yourself as an individual.
My funniest South Park memory of all time was a little kid's in there watching TV, and his dad runs in. He goes, "You doctor yet?" He goes, "Dad, I'm 7." Zed gets mad and slams the door. So, I mean, you see it in all over the place. Like, I mean, population. You go back to 1950, the average woman had 4.5 kids. Now that's down to 2.5. Now you have several countries that have a contracting population rate, Japan being one. When I lectured in Japan, those younger dentists told me that the reason the girls weren't having babies is because it was so stressful in school trying to get into a good high school, and it was so stressful in high school trying to get into a good college, and it was so stressful in college trying to get a good job at Honda. And then when you got the job at Honda, you worked 7 days a week, and then you died an alcoholic with a heart attack at 60. And the young girls are like, no, I'll just pass on the whole thing, not even have a kid. And so you're seeing as you go from having 4.5 kids to 2.5 kids. So now the projections are we'll never have 10 billion humans on Earth. I mean, they're saying it won't even get to 10 billion by 2050. You already got a dozen countries contracting, and they're saying that by 9.8 billion, it'll start contracting again, and it'll probably contract all the way down to like 5. I mean, we're at 8 now. And so it's going to go backwards, and I guess that's what work-life balance to me. I mean, I never learned as work-life balance. I always learned it as work balance, meaning that I've only worked part-time my whole life, 7 to 7 days a week. I did not work 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. So I I only worked half time, but my gosh, it's a different world. Another thing I want to ask your generation is the marketing is so different with your social media. I see people, they want to do all their marketing on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Pinterest and all that. But in my day, marketing was joining the Kiwanis Club. It was going to, it was pressing the flesh. It was more like you're running for mayor. It was looking someone in the eye and shaking their hand and saying, hey, you know where Safeway is on 48th and Elliott? I'm that dentist there. If you ever need a dentist and you put out your hand, you shake their hand. And I was always running for mayor, pressing the flesh, shaking hands. And then this generation says, oh no, you should be able to do all this from your bathroom on Facebook and never actually have to meet a person. What do you think of that?
I think that there's a certain charm to both ways of doing things. I definitely started off doing things with the shake your hand, meet people in person way of marketing myself, and I loved it. I'm a people person. I love the social interaction of all of it. And then as I started building my business, I started building the brand, and I had a lot more patience. I found actually I didn't have time to be out there as much and meet people in person. And so as I got busier, what I found was I needed a website. I needed to put it out there on Facebook because I was meeting friends of friends, and I was, getting more techniques and more procedures integrated into the office that I wanted, the population to know about that they normally wouldn't have. I needed the, mailers that I was doing. And what I did strategically to still be able to implement the in-person interactions was that I hosted events. Rather than going to seek out the events, I hosted events where I would still get that in-person interaction, but it was more centered towards the business. And what I found with social media is it's so user-friendly. People go on there to have a good time. There's no pressure that, oh my God, I clicked on this informational, brochure for this procedure that the dentist does, and now I'm booked solid into like buying it and committing to it. They can kind of on their own do their shopping, do their research, go onto Google, get comfortable, watch some YouTube videos about a procedure. And then when they come into me, they're educated and ready. What I found was when I was meeting people in person, they would tell me at a cocktail party, oh, I'm having this problem, and can you look in my mouth? Tell me your thoughts. And then by the time they came to my office, they felt very committed, that pressure, like, oh my God, now I have to work with this dentist and I have to do this procedure. With social media, I put something out there. I'm like, hey, I offer this, and it's something that can make you feel better about yourself or make you a healthier person. So do your homework, do your research. And so when you come into me, we can talk about it and consult about it. But I think that social media has taken something very cryptic and scary and something that's full of fear and put it out there in a friendly way. You see your dentist being a regular person. So when you go in, you know who your dentist is, you know what the procedure is. And I think that it is invaluable. You can't afford nowadays to not be out there on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, now I feel a little behind the times because I know there's TikTok and Snapchat. So it's changing, but I love that it's changing. That's just more platforms, a larger audience, and more information to put out there.
I'm not smart enough to comment on TikTok because, when people tell me all the ways they're stealing your data, it's like, have you ever heard of Mark Zuckerberg before? So yeah, it's the same thing they always did in college. They'd tell you all the atrocities that Russia and China did. And then August 4th, 1990 was my first lecture at the Sheraton in Manhattan in New York. So I'm coming up on my 30-year anniversary. But I noticed when I lectured in all those countries, here's my friends, dentists from Dental Town, giving me books, showing me all the horrendous things America did the whole time. And then you realize that, so when people say TikTok is evil, I'm always like, are you talking about Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin, Larry Page? Why is it the Chinese guy that's bad? So I don't believe any of the TikTok stuff because I think if you had to list all the atrocities in my lifetime from 1962 to today, America would absolutely be the number one in everything you can imagine. So I don't buy into that. But the Snapchat makes me think of something totally different. That Snapchat was started as a way for me to send you a picture that you look at once and it disappears. How could that go public, but Aspen can't go public? Heartland can't go public. How come the largest DSOs aren't publicly traded on NASDAQ, but a pornographic social media send you a picture disappear makes it? It's kind of a weird message. So I wanted to ask you that because a lot of the kids that are coming out of school, when you go talk to them, they say, well, I don't want to start up a practice and be, I want to go get a job at one of these DSOs, but something just doesn't seem right. My mom and dad don't care for them. NASDAQ won't let them go public, but Snapchat can. So what would you say to her if she's hesitating going to work for Bob Fontana at Aspen or Rick Workman at Heartland or Stephen Thorne at Pacific Dental or just any DSO, just any house? How many DSOs are in New York City? Do you even have a list?
I don't have a list, but I know there are way more now in terms of these, private equity groups getting involved and bringing these practices together. So here are my thoughts on DSOs. I think they are a great portal of entry into the industry. I think they streamline things for newer dentists. They give you kind of a thought process. They give you a toolkit and they say, here you go. This is how you're going to practice dentistry and get good at bread and butter dentistry for a number of years. And I think that many students and residents still need that. I think that it's going to be difficult for them to go public because you're taking something that people are attracted to. Snapchat is something people are attracted to. It brings them together. And the thought process is now like, how do we come together digitally? So it's a different frame of thought. And I think that with DSOs, what you're taking is that every person is unique and you can't treat every single person with the exact same tools and thought processes every single time. And I think that our industry will always stay very geared towards a solo practitioner because there's a personality involved. There's, different materials involved. There's different techniques involved. And it's hard to take number of people that have various ways of thinking about things and doing things and put them together in a building and say, hey, make this robotic and make it work the same every single time. I think that is where we excel as a profession, is we put so much out there in terms of a unique skill set or a unique type of idea or thought process so that every patient can pick what's right for them. And I think that with DSOs, there's going to be dentists that fit in there, and there are going to be dentists that will never leave that. But there are going to be many dentists that are going to say, oh, but I saw that other procedure out there that I want to do that I'd like to implement, and I'm going to start my own practice in order to do that. And I think that's going to be the long-term challenge for DSOs, is that while they're going to be that stepping stone or that point to shoot off in your career, I think it's going to be difficult for them to retain people long term.
And what was when you started? You said they know that try all these things, but hopefully you'll get attracted to one thing, and start with that one thing. What was your one thing, and what are you doing now? What's your one thing, and what are you into now at your office?
My one thing was going to be crown and bridge, and the offshoot of that, which are veneers, just because I loved to make people smile. And I loved immediately off the bat to take the front of someone's face, their facade, their presentation, who they are as a person, and transform that and give them an entirely new life. And I really enjoyed doing it then, and I really enjoy doing it now. And I think that everything that I provide in my office is going to be a procedure that I can do that's an adjunct to making that happen in an even more magical way on a day-to-day basis.
And I mean, would it be an oversimplification to say cosmetic dentistry?
It wouldn't be an oversimplification, but I didn't want to use the word cosmetic dentistry because I think it didn't encompass why I would want to do cosmetic dentistry. And I think I enjoy more explaining why than just saying I'm a cosmetic dentist.
Yeah, and so I always like to one of the things I do is like additions proven by subtraction. 1 + 1 = 2, but 2 - 1 is we're back to 1. Multiplication, the opposite is followed by the opposite is division. I always like to take the opposite. Like if someone says, "Well, everything you just said," well, what's the opposite of that? I'll never forget when Matthias Horgan was telling me that in U.S. war, 100% of all the soldiers who ever lost their mandible, no matter how they fixed it, the soldier always ended up committing suicide 100% of the time. You're not going to go through life without a mandible, no matter what they did. And so that proves the opposite is true. I mean, humans won't even live if they're uncosmetic enough. If they're uncosmetic enough,
Right.
they'll take their own life every time. So that's the opposite of cosmetic dentistry. What is do you do any other things? I mean, do you like doing Invisalign, endo? What other procedures besides crowns, veneers?
Initially I shied away from clear aligners. I wasn't that sure and confident. I had heard some stories, and I was not sure if it was ortho was something I really wanted to implement in my practice and delve into deeper. I think that over the years, as I followed the aligner technologies improvement and their continuing education improving, their study clubs getting better, I felt more comfortable diving deeper. And in the recent past, what I have found is that I've used clear aligners as a way to preserve tooth structure. I'm not doing any heroics with it. I still leave that to the orthodontist. I'm not jumping bites, and I'm not, altering vertical dimension with it. But what I find is that in the anterior region, when I educate my patient that I'm going to now move your teeth and align them in a way that when we put your crowns on or your veneers on or your tooth colored bondings on there, underneath we're going to preserve the foundation of your tooth. I feel good about myself as a practitioner doing that. And I think my patients, once they hear and see the difference between what their tooth would look like without the alignment and what their tooth would look like with the alignment and the veneers, I think it sells itself. They're thrilled to know that underneath, their natural tooth structure remains intact. And, as we have better systems to bond to enamel, I think that is really, really been an amazing stepping stone in my practice for me as a clinician to do better work.
I'm going to throw a couple things at you, and again, I'm trying to repurpose my podcast to the class of COVID 2020. I mean, who cares? I
Yeah.
mean, I turned 58 next month. I mean, who cares about a bunch of 60-year-old dentists who their biggest problem is, should I just sell my practice and retire, or should I go work another year or two? I mean, who cares about that, guys? I'm worried about our replacements. I'm worried about the kids coming out. I mean, good Lord. And I'm thinking about when I came out of school, all those older dentists who came and talked to your class, who had an open door to their deal. So I'm worried about those kids the most. If she is going to go open up her own practice, I graduated May 11. I had my own practice up September 21. Or maybe she just wants to take a job at Aspen for a couple of years, and she wants to practice fillings, crowns, but she wants to have her own place one day. How would you tell her to start forming her mind to think about that event someday? So that, yeah, we're in the middle of a pandemic, but someday you're going to own your own practice. What would be new thinking for her to start trying to picture what her new office is going to be about, what it's going to be like, what it's going to do, all that kind of stuff?
So I can speak to a younger, newer dentist in the way that I would speak to even a middle-aged dentist or a more seasoned dentist. Is there was this thought process all along that you have these highly specialized people in your office, and you have different providers in your office, like your hygienist does this, your endodontist does this, your, you know, periodontist does what they do. I would take what we saw happening right now and try to build a stronger core team to bring a few key players on board and to really build up management, because I think that these times are trying times for a team that's poorly managed. I would say that this is your time to find a consultant or a management team that really will help you come together as a unit and learn more how to educate your clients and your patients, rather than to just say, hi, I'm providing all of these procedures at this price. I think that this pandemic was very necessary on that front, because it really tested the people that were more selling procedures and less selling a thought process or a management style. And I think with the younger dentists, go ahead, make the move, buy that practice, but also implement things that you weren't sure if you would do at this point or not. You know, learn that Invisalign skill set or that clear aligner skill set, because at times like this, when you have to practice aerosol free, that's going to keep you floating and getting through the hard times. I also think this is a great opportunity when people are more digital and virtual, that people are looking at their faces. So dive in deeper to learn a little bit about Botox and fillers. You know, people want to feel good and they want to invest in feeling good, because what's going on right now is the exact opposite of that. So you want to sell happiness, you want to sell a strong, well-managed team. And I think that that's why this is a great time, because a lot of the doctors who are retiring will hand you something that may not be managed the way you want, that may not be structured the way you want, but you can go in and do that right now and do it slowly as people are coming out of being scared and coming back to the dentist.
So I'm gonna ask you a very complicated question. You know, when I all through life, if you do anything, hold up your hand. If you do it faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, smaller, you're always rewarded. Everybody loves you, buys your product. And when Smiles Direct Club came and they said, we're gonna do orthodontics faster, easier, higher quality, lower cost, cheaper, whatever. Oh my God, that's been the biggest controversy. I can't think of a bigger controversy in dentistry. What would be bigger than that in the last couple of years? So when dentists tell me, they say, well, I've never done Invisalign. I've never done that. I said, well, it sounds like the lawsuits are all about people doing it that never even went to dental school. So it sounds like the problem in Arizona is that you got a bunch of girls in mall because they got the closers. And so I want to be frank with what I opened up. When you go into the malls in the old days, they had hot tamales like you selling. The easiest way to make the most money is buy commodities and sell it as a brand, and you get all that margin. That's how you make money. You don't make money in commodities unless you buy a commodity, sell it as a brand. So they had the lipstick counters, and these girls, old grandma would walk by and she'd sell her all this stuff. And that market got disintermediated by online shopping. And girls would go there and they would try on all the lipsticks and say, yeah, I'm going to buy this and this, but I'm going to go home and order on Amazon and it'll be half off. And then those makeup girls were calling their bosses saying, what the hell? I'm only paid commission. I just demoed this. You got to sell. I made nothing. Those are the girls Smiles Direct Club got, because they're closers. They're the ones out there saying, hey, 75, I can straighten up your teeth so straight they won't even notice that liver spot, and then we'll put on lipstick. And they're closers, but they're not dentists, but they're doing the case. And I might tell my friends, like, well, how can you say you can't do an Invisalign case when the whole problem in Arizona is girls from the makeup counter at Chanel number 5 across the star is the one doing it? So why is Smiles Direct Club so controversial for bringing the price of ortho down? I mean, just I guess I just want to hear your rant on Smiles Direct Club, because it is the biggest controversial thing in the space right now of cosmetics.
So I think I'll even take it a step further. I think the rant is about aligners in general. I think what happened is that it became more of a marketing game than it became a service game. And Invisalign played that game incredibly well. Smile Direct Club played it even better than Invisalign. And so I think what we as a profession got caught up in is these billion-dollar marketing schemes. There are amazing aligner brands that are less expensive than Invisalign, less expensive than Smile Direct Club. They're not getting the viewership, and they're not being offered as widely as they should be. And those would come from us as providers. So I think that we lost the viewership game in the sense that Smile Direct Club picked up a storefront. They became very visible. Dentist offices are not necessarily always visible. Invisalign created that visibility by pouring money into their marketing budget. But what I do tell my patients is that you get what you're buying from. So when you go to McDonald's, you're getting what McDonald's serves. When you go to a fine French restaurant, you're getting what a fine French restaurant serves. And I think that sends the message better than saying you're buying something cheaper. People don't know they're buying something cheaper. People don't know they're buying something that they should only be buying from a certain provider, because it's being sold to them and they see it. So when you give the analogy in a different way and you tell them, would you buy a nice bottle of French wine from McDonald's or a fast food chain? You wouldn't, but they're also not available there. And there's a reason for that. So I think that it's a very complex set of unfortunate circumstances that brought us to where we are, where Smile Direct Club came in with a large number of kind of ways to market themselves. They became very visible to people. And we as a profession didn't make it clear that this is a medical service. It's a dental service. It's a healthcare service. It's something that can affect your entire body. And I think that when I send my patient who's in for clear aligners for special scans, and I go over the scans with them and I educate them about what's going on, they immediately see the difference between what was going on with Smile Direct Club and what's going to happen in our office together. And we're doing this as a joint effort. And this goes for any aligner brand that a provider can provide out of their office versus anything a storefront can. And I also take it one step further and I tell them, if you had pain for a wisdom tooth, or if you had pain that required a root canal, would you feel comfortable going to like a CVS in the middle of the night and saying, Yeah, I would like for a robot to go into my mouth and open that up. I mean, maybe robotics is our future, but I think that there's a charm to having something customized and having a good service that goes along with whatever product that you're investing in yourself in.
I have all my hopes into robots because when they perfect the robots, I'm going to get married again. But I'm not marrying a human again. Uh, so I'm waiting for that robot. But that's I love how you picked up on that Smile Direct in the storefront retail. I mean, my gosh, everything I grew up in that real estate just goes up in value. You know, the New York Stock Exchange will go up 12%. Commercial real estate will go up 12%. I mean, you're a runner, but I don't know what you're running from. Is there usually is it the law? Is there usually a sheriff behind you? Is there a loudspeaker? But if you ran across Phoenix, you would think the number one franchise was Space Available. I mean, it's just been decimated by Amazon. But yeah, that is just amazing. Um, I want to ask this question. I want to ask it kind of delicately because I don't want it to be taken as rude. But I hear this question from girls 10-1 over boys. So I'll just leave it at that. She's 25. She went back to Parsons, Kansas. She worked for her childhood dentist for 2 years. She bought the practice from the old man. He's retired. And now she tells me she's 30 years old. And those girls would do everything the man said, just like that. And now when she says it, they don't. Is that perception, reality, real, true, false? But I hear it. So then when I have other dental practice management consultants on, I said, do you ever hear that? And they say they hear that too. Do you hear that? And where do you think that comes from?
I hear it, and it's also a very factual statement from personal experience. I think that when it comes to office management and being in that C-level seat as a female, and especially as a younger female, you really struggle when it comes to power and getting that even keel with whoever you bought your practice out from. Usually in our cases, an older male dentist. And I believe that is the case because of the way we're going about it. I think that, it as a profession, if we make it more known that women are also our equals on all fronts when it comes to leadership, when it comes to being practitioners, when it comes to research, I think that the industry will see us differently. But I think the step has to come from the perception. Like when you watch TV today, you still see an older man usually talking about the product or talking about the practice or the industry. So I do think it is a struggle, and I think there's various ways to go about handling it. You can put someone in between yourself and your team as a middleman, and that person can facilitate that power struggle that happens. I also think that it's about your language and the way you treat the staff. And I think that if you still continue to manage the office in much the same way and use the same cues as the prior practitioner, you can overcome that over time. But I do think that still exists.
Um, a lot of the older guys. I mean, we've been burned so many times. I mean, you can't be almost 60. I mean, remember when Ivoclar came out with Targus Vectorus, and I don't know what Targus, I don't know what Vectorus was, but they hated each other and they came apart 3 years later. Then they came out with Horace Calder came out with Art Glass. We just kind of we just think a lot of stuff. We'd rather let the young kids try it for 5 years and tell if it works. We're not going to jump in. And that's my number one advice to young kids with products is every time I see a hot new technology, I always think, man, I hope some 25-year-old kid who's working as an associate somewhere else tries this for a year to see if it works, because why would they care? They're going to quit that place and go work somewhere else. But you just start to be really cautious after you've stuck your tongue in a light socket several times. But a lot of people, a lot of older people project that on the oral health connection where they see all these young kids saying, well, gum disease causes Alzheimer's and all this stuff like this. How do you talk or think about oral health related to overall health when it's still really early in the game? We probably won't know everything. I always think that we probably won't really know what's going on for about 5,000 more years. I mean, 5,000 years ago with the pyramids, we were born in the middle of the Flintstone era. And that's why everything is an art and a science, because you're going to live your whole life and die before they probably even know what gravity is. You know what I mean? But it's out there. So how do you navigate the overall health versus the oral health when you don't have complete information and you won't have it in your lifetime?
Well, that's a very fascinating conversation because being in New York, I still see a lot of influx with patients coming in with silver fillings. And they never knew there was another type of filling. They think that's the only kind of filling you can have is either gold or silver. So I think that, coming from decades of waiting to find out how bad mercury is for you, I agree that it's going to take decades, even centuries, to see what the long-term impacts of anything we're doing will be, and so far as to say right now, the implant industry is the gold standard for a missing tooth. We won't know for a long time from now if that's even the case. And we don't know if the movements we make for people's teeth with these aligners are healthy, stable movements, or if they're doing some type of damage overall to the person's well-being versus the traditional way of using, brackets. So while I would say that, I think there's always a ratio to be considered. Is doing this procedure to salvage this person's periodontal health that will make their cardiovascular situation better so far as we know it, and you're doing that in good faith, that has a tremendous value rather than leaving this problem alone and not doing anything about it and having a person go through their entire lifetime without addressing it. So I think on a day-to-day basis as practitioners, the decision we're making is what we're doing adding more value to this person's life and health and overall well-being than leaving it alone would. And I think that's what we're getting trained to think, and what continuing education has actually done for me. It's taken me out of, okay, we're addressing this one small hole with bacteria and taking this person out of pain into, implementing a technology that has time lapse so that over the years and decades that a client or a patient is with me, I can know this breathing problem, this airway problem is doing this for the patient long term. And I think that that's what our technology should be doing for us. It shouldn't just be filling a hole or, solving an immediate problem. It should be helping us understand people and the way we're evolving. And, that is really the value in anything we implement moving forward as an industry.
When patients ask me if there's anything wrong with mercury, I always say there's a reason they don't put it in the Flintstones chewable multivitamins. You'll never ever find mercury in a children's multivitamin. Image, perception versus reality. Again, we're out here in the big square states where, there's 8 hours of nothing until the next town. And our vision of this whole pandemic was your hometown. I mean, it was just New York. And it looked like you guys were in hell for a long time. And now a lot of people are saying that what happened in New York is coming to my great state of Arizona, Florida, Texas. And then you have a whole nother group of epidemiologists to say that historically the coronavirus flattens out in the summer and comes back in the fall with a vengeance. But nobody can predict the future, but you actually lived through the past. So what was it like living in New York through the COVID-19 when your mayor was on the, was that your mayor or your governor? It was your governor, right?
It was our governor.
Who's on the TV every day. I mean, the whole nation was watching
Every
New
single
York
day.
City. I mean, it was New York City for the first, your first date to the pandemic was New York City for a month. What was that like and how did you survive?
So I definitely found the entire ordeal to be so shocking. I think our governor, I have to compliment him. I think he stepped to the plate and he took full charge of the situation where he could. But it was eye-opening for us as New Yorkers to see how flooded our city was and to see how many various ways we could come under attack from a virus, the nursing homes, the projects, the corporate work environment. And I think that's what makes New York so unique is our population and how dense it is and how our demographic is just astounding compared to any other city in the world. And it was devastating to see all these nursing homes being affected, to not see the situation being managed properly because they didn't have a good count of what they needed and where they could send these people that were sick from the virus. And watching our hospital systems get overwhelmed and watching our city like one day at a time kind of fall apart. You see people packing their bags and leaving for the suburbs and saying, well, this is it for me with New York City. I'll never come back to a city that's been so mismanaged. And you see our culture, all of our, beloved Broadway shows, our operas, our, nightlife seem kind of crumbling apart. And I think that it was a massive learning experience for the city also about how much they need to be prepared, not just for one day of a terror attack or for one day or 2 days of a blackout, but for something that could turn into a long-term problem that can jeopardize the city like this. And I think as a dental professional, my first instincts were, how do I protect my patients? I had patients who had needs. I had staff that needed to be taken care of, and it became a very serious matter overnight. And my initial instincts were, I'll do anything I can for my staff because I know they rely on their paycheck from me for survival. And it was like, I don't want you in the office risking yourself until we have the proper PPE that we need to stay open and the proper armamentarium we need to keep our office safe. For my clients, and it was really making these decisions about what's priority, who needs what done, and explaining to them the situation that was going on. We heightened our level of, taking in phone calls, answering questions by email. And I think every practitioner in the city went through that, where they were initially first and foremost concerned about their staff, then they were concerned about their patients. And then I really was impressed to see how many of us put ourselves last. We made ourselves available personally to pick up the tasks that needed to be taken up. So many of us volunteered to go in and donate our, PPE and help our colleagues in the hospitals who needed it. So it was shocking and on many fronts devastating, and still remains to be unknown what's going to happen in the fall. But I'm very optimistic that the city will slowly move out of it and will be more prepared in the future to better manage things as individuals and as smaller entities, and not really relying on the government as a whole so much.
And looking back, what was more stressful for New York City? Would you say it was May 2020 during the pandemic, or May 2015 when David Letterman retired?
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question. My gosh. I just and I know that you can't answer the question any more than tell me what the stock market's going to close at or open up on Monday or whatever. Nobody has a crystal ball. In fact, Einstein even said there is no future and there is no past. You only have the presence in relative physics. But do you think that the fall is going to be, do you think this is going to come back in the fall to a new height yet
I
seen?
think that's a great question. I think the worst is over. I think we will have a peak if schools open and if corporate buildings start to open up quickly, because people will be flooding back into the city that have been hiding out. I don't think it will be as bad because everyone is more aware of what they need to do in terms of, wearing their masks, sanitizing, being socially distanced, and they'll be able to manage the situation better. And I think as long as we continue to face things, as long as we don't overpopulate our indoor spaces, we should be fine. I do think that it's also a question of immunity. People have been more exposed over time to various things that they weren't before, and I think that it'll be interesting to see that interplay going on of, how much stronger people have become over the past few months.
Um, for me, so August 4th, 1990 was my first lecture, and I gave it in Manhattan because deep down inside, I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, went to undergrad at Creighton in Omaha, went to dental school in Kansas City. I mean, my tri-state area was Kansas, Nebraska, and Missouri. Yours is, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey. And mine was just 3 states that all had the same Walmart and the same gas station. But I wanted to go to New York City. So me and my buddies sit out there to do that. And I'll never forget looking out the window, and all of a sudden I realized that dark cloud over there was Manhattan. And it was like an inversion of the Grand Canyon. It was like, I couldn't believe it. And then we were walking around. It seemed like, growing up in Canada, it seemed like nobody spoke English. And then when I was checking in at the Sheraton, I finally got to the girl and I said, my gosh, what language were you speaking? And she told me. I said, wow, that's just rare that you know that language. She goes, son, you can't work at the Sheraton in Manhattan without knowing a minimum of 5 languages. And then we were checking in. I was with Craig Steichen, a dentist in in Albuquerque, and we were asking all the checkers, but between the girls manning the desk, we counted something like 15 languages. Just crazy. But I was wondering if you had any insights on the mask issue, because you constantly meet people from around the world, and all my dentist friends online from other countries, they're just like, what is the deal with them? They're asking you to wear a mask. They're not asking you to walk around town with no pants on. They're just asking you to wear a mask, and people are just like, this is my constitutional right. I'm willing to die for this. They're ready. So living in the city of all cities, what is it about our country where the mask is so controversial to where other countries can't even diagnose what the hell it is?
Well, I think we're used to breathing amazing, clean, fresh air. And I think that people don't realize what a luxury that is, because in many countries, clean air, clean water, those aren't as, obvious and available. So I think as New Yorkers, as Americans, we feel, okay, I'm outside, I'm breathing my fresh air. It's my right as an individual to be able to do that. I'm not harming anyone. And I don't think they realize that now you actually could, and you are, because you're not covering yourself up properly. And you're doing that more for the safety of everyone around you, because you may be the person that's putting the virus out there. So I think it has really helped individuals understand that we live in communities and that we have to care for each other. And people who are unable to understand that and have a problem with wearing the mask, I don't fault them, because we are a very, individual based society, or we have become that way. And I think that it's hard to tell people who think they have rights to do something that they don't want to do. And I think that after you make people aware of why you're asking them to do this, and it's not just about, if you don't do this, it's going to have this negative effect, or this is going to happen with the police, and make it into more of a punishment for something you did or you didn't do. I think that it's more awareness. We went from one day expecting people to just go out and be themselves to the next day saying, you have to wear a mask. Whether you can find one or not, you make one, you buy one, you borrow one, you do what you have to do. You have to have a mask on because we're saying you have to do it. I think it was presented the wrong way. I think as soon as you explain to people why they're being expected to do something, they're they come out of this place of ignorance or that place of I'm being told what to do to, yeah, I would definitely do that. If it meant saving someone like my mom or someone else's mom, I would definitely be able to chip in and do my part in society. And I think it's made us all think more of ourselves as part of a society rather than an individual. And I think that being part of society is something that is more common in other places than it is in America. And I think that that's where the lack of communication really interplayed in the situation.
This is kind of a weird, hard to ask question, but hard to get my own. But when times are good, everything just works. Like when everybody's rich and happy and life's good, everybody just looks away. But when times are tough, people get cranky. Little kids first take it out on their mom. I mean, the mom can't. When someone asks, well, what causes that? I'm sure. I'm sure that if you're on The Price is Right, mom would get the highest score. It's always mom's fault. And in dentistry, that's going to be organized dentistry. And so when they're not happy and they're cranky, the first one they start chewing out is the dental society. What advice would you give to dental societies like the ADA, like the New York Dental Association, where they're like, they're sitting there. A lot of these state dental associations have laid off a quarter of their staff because when your revenue, like I finished my I just finished today before I walked in here. Guess what news I got to hear? That my second quarter revenue was down 62% from a year ago. And of course, when the governor tells me I'm 100% Irish and they had the nerve to tell me on St. Patrick's Day to close my office, I'm like, really? You couldn't have waited till the next day? And then you're a hot tamale. They opened it back up on Cinco de Mayo. So they closed it down. I had a Jameson in my hand. I opened it up. I had a deal. People are not in a good mood. And when your revenue's down, I mean, we got a great team. I got a dozen people have been with me for decades. We were down 62% this quarter, second quarter over last quarter. And a lot of them are taking out, obviously, their mom and then their dental society. And a lot of the dental societies are thinking, well, if your revenue's down 62%, you're not going to come back and give me $1,000 to join the ADA. So what advice would you tell the ADA if your average homie is if the second quarter revenues average is down, just say it's down 25%, $1,000 is a lot of money. What advice would you give to organized dentistry, who's probably going to take all the blame for the pandemic? I'm sure there's 3 dentists out there who thinks the ADA actually invented the whole virus and built it in the basement laboratory. What would you tell them?
I would tell the ADA that, it was a learning lesson for them about how they were communicating things to their constituents. And not just the ADA on the national level, but also, the local and the state entities really needed to step up and not assume that people knew what was going on behind the scenes. So I think that in order to encourage people to stay on board and to encourage people to continue paying their membership dues, what I think they really need to do is make themselves more present, whether it's through social media, through phone calls. And I think that I would encourage them not to furlough their staff or lay off their staff. In fact, this is the time to keep your staff more active and to kind of get into your reserves, whatever they might be, and make that team a stronger team in terms of communication with its constituents. I would have, as a member and as a very proud member and as an active member, what I would have loved to have had, which I think didn't happen, was a phone call from someone from the ADA saying, hey, this is our call center and we are put in place to communicate with you that the ADA is doing XYZ behind the scenes. Even if it was like a pre-recorded message, it would have been nice to get that emergency postcard that they send out saying the ADA has done bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. And I think because of that massive lag in time where we were getting information more from, the governors and the mayors, that was blanket information that had to do with every single other industry as well, having more targeted communication early on, that we have detected this issue with the virus. We are doing our part to communicate with the World Health Organization, the United Nations, the American Medical Association. We were left in the dark as an industry about who the ADA talks to, how the ADA communicates. And, while we know in the back of our minds that our ADA is lobbying for us, we know that our ADA is a source of continuing education and other resources. I think at this time, it became more important that we knew what their relationship with the White House or FEMA is, rather than, okay, we can get you PPE or we can get you XYZ, because I think that would have been more relevant to the local or the state level. I think the ADA really needed to say, hi, we are at the top of the pyramid, and at the top of the pyramid, these are the entities that we communicate with, and this is why we are so strong, and this is why you should continue to pay your membership. And I think for me, it was really that communication and that feeling that I'm, part of a strong unit that's well connected.
Nice. I mean, that was so spot on. I mean, so many profound things you said. Number one, why have I never been sued by a patient ever? The only people that ever sue me are dental companies, and it's never because of me. It's always because one of my homies said on Dental Town, and they always tell me to take it down, a strong arm, and I'll I'm not going to do it. It's their, their dental. It's freedom of speech on my private property. I'm not taking it down. I can't tell you how much lost advertising revenue I've got in that. I don't even care. Number two, the reason I've never been sued by a patient is because I see it on dental. I get this all the time. I just heard his patient's going to sue me, so I call my malpractice carrier, and I'm like, well, slow down, Spanky. What did the patient say? Oh, I haven't talked to the patient. Oh, wow, 8 billion people. Margaret's going to sue you, and you've talked to 3 other people but Margaret. Margaret would be the first person I would talk to. I mean, we're only talking about Margaret. And I know of specific examples where state dental associations have over $1 million in their savings account, but laid off employees with 10 years of relationships because they're not sure about next year's incoming dues. And you just nailed it. You're like, what are you doing? You have $1 million in savings, and this person has 10 years worth of relationships. And you think during the middle of the pandemic's the best time to get rid of your relationships? I mean, just myopic. They're just people who aren't thinking straight on. And the deal about life is real simple. It'd have been no fun to be born the only human. I don't care if you were born in the middle of Hawaii. If you were the only Homo sapien in the middle of Hawaii, you'd have walked around your whole life extremely confused, and I don't know how it would have been a good time. So the only thing good about life is people. So then the opposite, the only thing bad about life could be people. And so, yeah, that's just funny. It's always a relationship. It's always a relationship. In fact, I'm another thing in my generation, the young people say, well, if this lady refers one patient, I'm going to send her a mug with some gum and sugarless stills. And that's a beautiful thing because you acknowledge it. But then they say, oh, at 10, I'm going to send them dinner. And then at 100, I'm going to send them like a big screen TV. Now when you're getting a big screen TV, now it's creepy. It's like, why is my dentist sending me a big screen TV? And I'm the old school where, one was a mug and the candy's in there because only a few people are extrovert enough to do this. I mean, refer a bunch of patients. And at 10, I'm invited them to dinner at my house. And the same thing with referrals. I think I'm the only dentist in Ahwatukee. Now, Ahwatukee is actually part of Phoenix. If you want to be a lawyer about it, in fact, I still don't even understand New York City. They say New York City. I've never met anyone from New York City. I say, are you from New York City? No, I'm from Queens. Are you from New York City? No, I'm from Brooklyn. Is anybody here from New York City? No, I'm from Manhattan. I don't even think there is a New York City. And it's the same thing in Phoenix. We have a mountain park across the southern edge, and 10% of Phoenix on the other side of the mountain, and that's all. And they just call it Ahwatukee. It's Phoenix, but if you ask anybody in Ahwatukee, do you live in Phoenix? They say no, I live in Ahwatukee. But in this little Ahwatukee, which 10% of Phoenix, my marketing was Friday nights, or Saturday nights, I invited every single chiropractor, periodontist, endodontist, MD, allergist. But in my boys are 30, 28, 26, 24. They don't know of a single doctor in Ahwatukee that they didn't meet charcoaling a cheeseburger with dad, at a grill. And if you really want to press the flesh and run for mayor and get your chiropractor, like if you're against amalgam, well, then why haven't you had all the chiropractors over for dinner? Because they hate it more than any dentist I know. The naturopaths, the homeopath. And I learned a lot. I mean, I invited this woman over one night and her husband, and all she does is pelvic health exam. And I mean, pelvic health. Well, I don't have a pelvis. I've never had 5 kids. I didn't know any of this stuff. I mean, I was just amazed all night about how many things can go wrong with you when you incubate 4 new humans in your uterus. But that's the way I like to market. That's the way I like to press the flesh. I like to get out there and meet people. I like to invite them over. And as far as the ADA goes, they're like your parents. I mean, other than me, which is, I'm the only perfect parent I've ever heard of or known of. Everyone has problems. My mom turned 82 Saturday, and she even screwed that up, okay? But she's the only mom I have. And the ADA is your only mom. And you don't even know, they got all these people working 40 hours a day, 50 weeks a year, just trying to save dentistry. And then you find one thing they didn't do right, so you ship your mom off to a nursing home. I mean, it's just not a good idea. I mean, if you're gonna give up on I've been a due paying member when I paid my dues in dental school on student loan money. I mean, I was paying dues the ADA on student loan money. Dude, it's the only reason your mom cried at dental school graduation is because what the ADA has done for it. And if your best idea is to cut off the head of dentistry, you're out of your mind. And if you don't like the ADA, then get in there and volunteer and change. Same thing with this country. I think this country's got more things wrong with it than right with it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to move to New Zealand. It just motivates me to work even harder to change it from within. Because if I give up and move to Australia, well, I just ran from a problem. I'm gonna confront, America, the ADA, the pandemic, the virus, and I just love it. So one last question, and I'll let you go. You promised me an hour. And you're probably thinking, when is this guy ever going to shut up? But here's what I'm reading an email right now. I took your advice. I asked my local endodontist if I could come in and observe a molar root canal, blah, blah, blah. He told me if I really wanted to learn endo, I should go to endo school.
Okay.
So this is what they tell me. They're in a small town in Texas. They go to a study club. There's one orthodontist. She does an Invisalign case, and the orthodontist won't even look at her. And then now she thinks she's not welcome, and so now she thinks, okay, if I want that guy to like me, I can't impede on his territory. I can't do ortho. I can't. I mean, how does a young 25-year-old kid navigate the small town study club, which may be I'm sure when you go to a study club, it's 1,000 people. It's really big in a center. But when you're in, Salina, Kansas, and your study club has one orthodontist and one endodontist, and you say you're going to do Invisalign and take a course in molar endo, now you got 2 guys in the room that hope you wreck your car on the way home. How would you tell her to navigate that?
So to backtrack, join the ADA and volunteer. That was an important message because they need you and they need your feedback. But in terms of what we just brought up, I think that it's an interesting dynamic when someone asks you to take and fill the shoes of being a mentor to them for any kind of procedure or any type of other practice management guidance that you want. And I think that in terms of the mentors themselves, it was probably a tricky road or a path for them to become proficient at doing that really amazing molar endo or doing that really amazing Invisalign case or ortho case. So I think what they may have been trying to say is, don't come in, watch me do this one case, and then feel like you're proficient enough to go back to your office and tackle a dozen cases. Because in many instances, that is what happens. And you say, okay, well, I'm a dentist. I know how to do an anterior endo. So if I watch just one molar endo, I'm good. And I'll just go in and handle every single case that way. And I think that that is a specialist way of protecting you as a general dentist and saying, hey, this isn't that easy. You can't just come in a couple of times and learn this procedure and become proficient at it, because it took me so long to get to this point. And, I'm lucky enough to have two parents who are dentists and who served as mentors, but they never once said, hey, come watch me do this root canal and, you'll learn how to do it really well. And then you'll be off on your own doing molar endo in no time or doing these veneers in no time. Like, it took me the dozen years and investing in my education and seeking out various classes and study clubs to become proficient. And I continue to engage in those classes and, becoming more and more proficient. So I think as a less seasoned dentist or a younger dentist, you have to respect that message that they may not feel comfortable taking you on as a mentee. While you can go in and shadow or volunteer, they may also have a high-end clientele that doesn't want someone in the room. So it's important to understand why that specialist is telling you that. And I doubt that any specialist would say no if you offered to take them out to dinner or meet them somewhere off hours with a typodont to learn a procedure. That's a totally different request than, hi, I want to come in and assist you or watch you or learn how to do a procedure so that I can then go to my office and do that procedure. And I definitely think for newer, younger dentists, that's what YouTube is about. That's what all these study clubs and group meetings are about, that come directly from a manufacturer. And I think that that's the route to take, rather than putting pressure on a specialist that may be comfortable being friends with you, may be comfortable mentoring you in other things, but not want to clinically take on a responsibility.
Wow. So your mom and dad were dentists. That's pretty rare. How many is that, like, in your class? How many had both a mom and a dad as a dentist?
There were about a dozen of us, which was cool. They went in and they kind of started doing the procedure that their parent was doing and, then became more proficient at it. In my case, I lucked out that my mom and dad had different skill sets, so I picked up a little bit of both.
So do you think if you've got all 10 of you together, that'd be a big enough sample to find the recessive gene that causes someone to be a dentist? Have you thought about a genetic analysis of this?
You know what? I think the one thing all of us have in common is that our parents never talked about what they do at work at home. And so we all went in thinking, wow, our parents go to this magical place every day and they come back and we get to have, a somewhat fabulous lifestyle. So this seems like something we should do.
That is one thing you always hear when you hear a dentist and you say, congratulations, your son followed your footsteps. They always report that, say, yeah, I never told him to, I never asked him to, I never mentioned it. I only did it because I looked on the chart. They said dentists worked with 52 teeth and 43 muscles, and orthopedic surgeons work with 300 bones and 650 muscles. And I just thought, man, that dentistry looks a lot easier than orthopedic surgeons. You're fabulous. It's been an honor to podcast you. Was there anything that you were wanting to talk about that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, I wanted to just put out a broad message there for younger dentists to, get out there, engage in all these platforms and study clubs, and resources that we're so lucky to have because prior generations demanded it and pushed our manufacturers and, kind of corporate entities to really push the envelope on what's out there and what's available to us. And I think we are in such a great place. We have so many great things at our fingertips that we never had before. And stay positive, like all other things, COVID is just a phase and it's going to be a great few decades ahead of us.
Well, that's true. And I mean, everything passes but I do think at 58 years, this is the worst thing I've seen so far. I mean, I had to live 58 years to see that. But it's really cool because I always thought 1980 was the worst, and it was like it was 21% interest rates. It was double-digit unemployment, inflation. I mean, it was just so bad. And then everything after that, I thought I lived through the boondoggle in 1980. And it just kept getting better ever since. I never once thought that someday it'd be worse than 1980. So, so I wonder how long I'll have to live to have something worse than 2020. But you're a gem. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and talking to my homies. And her name is Dr. Hot Tamale Himali from New York City. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so wonderful.